So from the interaction and dynamics between fashion and the politics, students will have I think, a fresh perspective to look at the history. And also teaching, you just invest 10% and you will be returned from your talented students 90% joy.
You're listening to Speaking of Language, a podcast recorded at the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. Each week, we explore a topic related to language pedagogy and second language acquisition. This week on Speaking of Language,
Dr. Peidong Sun discusses how fashion played a role in the Cultural Revolution in China. She also shares details of her history studying in China and France, as well as her numerous upcoming book projects.
Welcome to a new episode of Speaking of Language. I'm Angelica Kramer, the director of the Language Resource Center at Cornell University.
And I'm Sam Lupowitz, the LRC's media manager. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Peidong Sun from Cornell's History Department.
Professor Sun is teaching a course this semester titled Fashion and Politics in 20th-Century China, and we can't wait to see how the two relate.
Welcome to Speaking of Language, Peidong.
Thank you for having me.
So, Peidong, you have lived, learned, and worked in many different countries. Can you please share with us a little bit about your background and your path with languages?
Oh, yeah. I spent 10 years at Sun Yat-sen University. That's the capital city of the Guangdong province, which means 129 kilometers from Hong Kong. It includes 4 years of undergraduate studies, majoring in French and minoring in Chinese languages and literature. And it is followed by 3 years of master's degree in French literature and language. I also went to Lyon 2 in France as an exchange student and studied economic sociology from 1999 to 2002. As a person who is boring in nature, I accomplished 2 PhDs. One is in law at Sun Yat-sen University, and the other is in sociology at Sciences Po Paris, also known as the Institut d'études politiques de Paris. So in terms of language, Chinese, French, and English are my working languages. As you may know, China is a multi-ethnic, multi-language, and multi-dialect country.
Yeah.
We have 56 ethnic groups, right? So, but our dialects are usually divided. We said it's 10 major dialects, but people who don't speak them, you will feel the others, when they speak them, you just think they are foreigners. You just can't understand those dialects. For example, when I was in China at home with my parents, I spoke Guanzhonghua. Guanzhong dialect is a subdialect of Shanxi dialect. And at school, I spoke Mandarins for teaching, and to interview my Chinese folks in Guangdong province for my first book, I learned to speak Cantonese, which is a totally foreign language for me. To collect the oral history for my second book, I learned to speak Shanghainese, another foreign language for me.
Wow. So what prompted your initial interest in French?
Oh, that was, in China, the France and the French culture have been always something very romantic. We have already romanticized all those things which have been far away from our ordinary life. That just creates my initial,
Sure.
interest. Yeah,
Yep, the language of love, right?
exactly.
Or so they
and
say.
the blind one. It was a blind love.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm told that you had a funny instance with language shock during your first visit to France in the year 2000. What happened there.
Yes, that was pretty funny. Maybe it's funny for me. You tell me if it is funny for you guys. As I mentioned, I spent 4 years learning French in Guangzhou. Most of the learning and reading materials and at Sun Yat-sen University back in the late 1990s were classic French literature.
Sure.
Most of them, except for a small part of business French. So you can imagine that I was taught the written languages of the 17th century, 16th century, 17th, 18th, 19th century, such as the masterpieces of, you name it, Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Balzac, Dumas, Hugo, André Gide, Marcel Proust, Colette, François Mauriac, all the things. So when I spoke French with French people on French streets in 2000, I was like an ancient dinosaur. Yeah, those folks thought my French was too recherché. That means unnecessarily sophisticated.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily sophisticated. Yes, I love it.
Is there such a thing though? I don't know.
I think it's
So, but I don't know now in your language teaching for students at Cornell, what kind of material, like textbook, you use? Maybe that's very important for students.
Oh, absolutely.
What they are learning, those language must be a vivid one, right?
Yes, yep.
Had a life, not just the book, the language we can read in books.
Yep, certainly. Well, and in today's day and age, we have easy access at our fingertips on our phones and our devices and the internet to get current glimpses into the society and the culture. So that's nice.
Yeah.
So speaking of teaching, you are currently teaching a course on fashion and politics in 20th century China. That is also connected to the Cornell Contemporary China Initiative lecture series this semester. So, first of all, what is your course about? Fashion and politics.
I actually took the main title of my first book, which is Fashion and Politics. And also, I think that's a good point or perspective to closely investigated what had happened in 20th century in China. So from the interaction and dynamics between fashion and the politics, students will have I think, a fresh perspective to look at the history.
So how does your course tie in with the lecture series? What's the connection between those two?
I invited 4 leading scholars from the US, Europe, and Australia. So their research have been at some point closely related to the main theme, which is fashion and politics. So I hope my students could have a unique opportunity to know those scholars' cutting edge research based on what we have already discussed in class, which means like the fashion crimes, a communist political aesthetics. So their everyday clothing, fashion, and politics, those popular languages, and revolutionary ideology, literature, relationship between color and politics. What the micro-politics of modern love. Of course, that love have been politicized. Yes. So all those interesting questions. And also, I, cooperate with the Cornell Fashion Textile Collection.
Oh.
Yes, they helped me to, or have a fashion exhibit for my students. So students can touch, of course, with gloves, special gloves,
Yes.
those beautiful, beautiful, and preserved outfits in 20th century China. So we have a very beautiful collections.
Nice.
And they asked the questions. I explained. So that was a very good. You can feel the good vibe.
So let's zoom in a little bit then. What is a politicized fashion? What prompted you to investigate that connection between politics and fashion?
Oh, that was original a misunderstanding by you guys. I mean, the Western journalists, especially a French one. People would think that during the Cultural Revolution, or Mao's years, like after 1949 to 1976, you Chinese people, you didn't have any fashion, especially during the Cultural Revolution. You always had the blue, black, and green. No other things. So based on my own research, I found it was not true. People during that time, for example, in the Guangdong province, which is very close to Hong Kong, at that time, the international fair, which is import and export, commodities or goods, products, was still, were continued during the Cultural Revolution. So you have the businessman, foreign businessman, came to do business with communist China, even during the Cultural Revolution. So their outfits were not something like like the Chinese, most of Chinese preferred to wear at that time. So that offered the ordinary people a different view of lifestyle outside of China. And during the Cultural Revolution, the connection and the exchange in between peoples, I mean, people in China and their family, their relatives, but who resident out of China, for example, Hong Kong, Macau, or US, for example. So because the time, the life was hard for Chinese people, their relatives send goods, including, the clothing included, back to China. So they have had the sources of showing or material of showing their fashion sense, even during the Cultural Revolution. That's basically, you can say the why the book is about fashion and politics. Yes.
When you talked a little bit about the use of color and the differentiation between colors, right? Can you talk a little bit more about how fashion actually reflected power structures, or also how it became a way of showing like either obedience or resistance?
Yes, that's a very good question. In 2015, I published an article in the China Quarterly, which is basically talk about people's, not only the obedience, that's all the huge stereotype by Western audience or scholars sometimes or public. Not only the obedience, but the disobedience, transmissions, and resistance by using their, everyday clothing fashion as a tool to show their mixed feelings of fashion under Mao during a high, communist revolution period. I just give you one example of how color, like, during the Cultural Revolution, Chairman Mao received the Red Guards from all of China in Tiananmen Square 8 times. And, at that time, he himself wore a, green military uniform. That shows, but not all, before Cultural Revolution, except for several very unique occasions, like Chairman Mao, met with the generals at that time as the party leader or the chef of the state. He would wear the military uniforms, but that was very rare. However, during the Cultural Revolution, when Chairman Mao received those little red guards, he himself wore a military uniform. That shows to the young people, our country, our state power now is in danger. You, the young generation, the revolution communist successors, you need to stand up and you need to show your perseverance, show your confidence, show your revolutionary spirits to support me, to get the power back to me. So that's, the green of the military, PLA military uniform tells story.
How do your students react to this topic? Do they draw similar comparisons with other cultures and times?
Oh, that's a good question. I have students, only one student from mainland China. The rest of Americans, they are also international students from other countries like Latin America or Europe. So students have very, I think from the feedback I witnessed in my class, I found they have mixed feedbacks. From one way, the Cultural Revolution, especially the dynamics, the power structure between fashion and politics, really fascinated them. I can say that very clear because we have very intense discussions in class, after class, and on the Canvas system. You see very often, the debates between them. They they have been very well trained, and they said, "Oh, I found your point is very interesting, but I think X, Y, Z." The reason, so you see, before in class and after class, students really are fascinated by the topic, and then they have very, very intensive discussions.
What other courses will you be teaching in the future?
Oh, for the spring 2023, I will teach 2,000 courses. One is Global Maoism, History and Present. The other one is Tyranny and Dignity, Chinese Woman from the Cultural Revolution to Hong Kong Protests. Why
Wow.
that's a global Maoism? Just because, this course will help students have a better understanding why Maoism has been still hunted not only in China, but also in the rest of the world. And for the tyranny and the dignity, basically is a woman's history. That title just came from the day I saw the Iranian woman who died, and who those people threw their scarf into the fire, right? They danced. How brave they are. And that remind me the Chinese woman, how brave they were, and the human condition, their living condition, and their have been always full of pain, the violence, the violence, the fear from their family, from their community, from the state power. But how resilient those Chinese women they have been, and they are.
Peidong, your new book is titled Underground Reading: How the Cultural Revolution Shaped the Xi Jinping Generation. A key concept of this book originates from linguistic studies. Tell us more about that.
The book hadn't been published, so I just give a very brief, introduction about that concept.
Sure.
Actually, I use acquisition. I heard that word in your previous interviews several times. So for me, that's, I guess, also for you guys, it's a wildly used concept, but it is not necessarily obvious, for people in different discipline. So when I mentioned the concept, some people would ask me, what's the meaning of that word? And why do you use that word? But I think, I'm talking about a revolutionary acquisition. That's, for me, that's a key idea for the book.
Oh, that is really interesting. When is this book coming out?
I hope it's 2024.
Well, now you just gave the listeners something to look forward to in the not too distant future.
What other projects are you working on right now?
Yes, I'm working on 4 other books after publishing.
How many? 4?
4, yes.
Peidong, wow.
Yes, before, when Chairman Xi Jinping took the office, late 2012, I published 2 books, 2012 and 2013, early 2013. But after that, in 1 decade, I haven't published one. So that's why you see now I have 4 books, same time.
Wow.
So this one, the underground reading, how the Cultural Revolution shaped the Xi Jinping generation, will publish the 2024. And another one is the nature of the Chinese Communist Party and inside history. That one will publish the 2025. And another book in French, I guess,
Oh, wow.
2025. And I also have another memoir, my first one, and I may be the only one, in English.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, it sounds like you know how to keep yourself busy. I like that.
Oh, in Ithaca, except academic life, you have no life outside of campus. What can you do? Weather is so bad, not today. Then you have to do something. What I can do, what I'm good at to do, that's right.
Yes.
Right? Except teaching, that's right.
Of course, yeah. Well, as long as it brings you joy, right? That is all.
Oh, that's
that is
absolute
important.
joy. And
Yes.
also teaching, you just invest 10% and you will be returned from your talented students 90% joy.
Yeah.
I really, they are genius.
Well, Peidong, this has been wonderful to chat about with you. Before we sign off, we'd like to ask you to share a word in a language you speak, love, are learning, want to learn, that makes you laugh. Let's hear that word.
Oh, that's related to my name, my first name, exactly. A French word, Peidong. When I arrived in France 2000, some people couldn't pronounce well correctly from my side, my first name. The French people, they will say Peidong, in France, that G pronounce. So but for Chinese, ge my first feedback will be brother. That's 哥哥. So, but I'm a woman, right? So I don't want people call me Peidong brother. So here's what I did. So I said, Peidong. That's Peidong in English means concrete. That's one of the construction materials, right? So I said, if you couldn't pronounce, if you pronounce Peidong, then that's similar to my name, my first name in Chinese. And also, most importantly, for the people who have a good sense of popular culture at that time, they will know there was one of the Martineau French slang. It's les Peidong. Les Peidong, that means, let it be, or, let's move on. So,
I
something
like it.
that. Yeah, it was fun.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking of language with us today, Peidong.
My pleasure. Thank you both.
Next week, we'll speak with Julia de Aragon from the board of the Latino Civic Association of Tompkins County. Until then,
Auf Wiederhören!
The Language Resource Center is located on the ground floor of Stimson Hall on Cornell's main campus in Ithaca, New York. Check us out on the web at lrc.cornell.edu.
or follow Cornell LRC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Speaking of Language is produced by Angelica Kramer and Sam Lupowitz.
Recorded by Sam Lupowitz.
Original music by Sam Lupowitz, Dan Gable, and Joe Gibson.
Thanks also to the College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University.
As a reminder, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Sciences or any other official entity of Cornell University.
We thank our listeners, and do stay tuned for our next episode.